Okay, so have you ever felt like ballet is like its own language?
It really is. It has its own vocabulary, its own grammar, even its own culture.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're diving into today with ballet illustrated mastering techniques and vocabulary. It's like a Rosetta Stone for understanding the beautiful and sometimes confusing world of ballet.
I love that analogy. And you don't need any prior experience to follow along either. This book does such a great job of breaking down the fundamentals for anyone, even if you've never set foot in a dance studio.
Right, like you don't need to know a pas de bourrée from a pirouette to get into it.
Exactly.
So, like, where do we even begin with, like, understanding ballet? It seems so intricate.
Well, much like any language, you start with the basics.
Okay, so like the alphabet then.
Exactly. And in ballet, that means the five basic foot positions.
Ah, the positions. The book has these gorgeous illustrations, by the way. It's like flipping through a fashion magazine, only with more footwork.
They are beautiful and essential. These positions are the foundation for pretty much every single movement in ballet.
Okay, so let's try to picture this. First position, that's the one where, what, your heels are together and your toes are pointing out to the sides.
You've got it, except it's not as simple as it sounds. It's all about turnout.
Turnout.
Yeah, the rotation of the legs outward from the hips. So you're not just sticking your feet out, you're engaging specific muscles to create that beautifully open line from the hips all the way down to your toes. Even in first position, dancers are working towards that ideal 180-degree turnout.
Wow, so there's a lot going on even in just standing there? I never realized.
Right.
It's deceiving, isn't it? That's the magic of ballet. It makes incredibly difficult things look effortless.
Okay. So, first position, we're turning out. Got it. What about second position? Second position builds on that turnout. So you're basically widening your stance, feet still turned out, until there's a long, continuous line from the heel of one foot to the toes of the other.
It sounds pretty, but also kind of hard to hold.
Oh, it definitely is. It requires a ton of strength and flexibility to maintain that turnout and alignment.
And like, this is all still just the starting point.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that those positions, which seem kind of basic, are like what eventually leads to those big leaps and spins you see in performances.
You're exactly right. Each position is preparing the body for those more complex movements. It's about building the strength, flexibility, and control needed to execute those movements safely and beautifully.
Wow. So much goes into it. Okay, so what's next? Third position.
Third position is interesting. While it's considered a basic position, you actually don't see it as much in contemporary ballet choreography.
Oh, why is that?
Well, it's more of a transitional position. It helps dancers develop the coordination and strength needed for those more dynamic movements. Think of it as the bridge between the first two positions and the more complex fourth and fifth positions.
Makes sense. So in third, one foot is crossed in front of the other, right?
Yes, heel to arch. And the turnout is still crucial.
All right, got it. Now bring on fourth position. That's one I always think of from those like classic ballet pictures.
It's a very elegant position for sure. So in fourth, the feet are apart, one in front of the other, with the heel of the front foot lined up with the toe of the back foot.
It kind of reminds me of like that perfectly balanced moment right before something really cool is about to happen.
I like that. And the arms often come into play here too, creating these beautiful lines and enhancing the balance even further.
Okay, and then we have fifth position, the ultimate ballet pose, right?
It's definitely considered the ideal in terms of technique. It requires the most turnout, core engagement, and that lifted, elegant posture we associate with ballet.
So feet crossed at the ankles, toes pointed, and usually like arms up in a graceful curve.
Precisely. It's the culmination of all the previous positions, and it takes years of training to achieve and maintain.
Wow, so those five basic positions really are the foundation. But what about the actual moves? Like, how do you go from standing there looking graceful to, like, actually dancing?
That's where the fun really starts. And luckily, Ballet Illustrated breaks down some of the most important basic movements, too.
So tell me, what are some of these fundamental moves we should know about? Like, I've definitely heard of plie.
Oh, plie is crucial. Think of it as a graceful bend of the knees, like a controlled squat.
So it's all about the bend.
It's about the control and the strength. You're engaging your core, your thighs, your calves, everything. And it forms the foundation for so many other ballet steps.
So it's kind of like the engine that powers a lot of the fancier movements.
Exactly. And then you have releve, which is all about rising up onto the balls of your feet.
Releve sounds a little more intimidating. Like, what exactly does that involve?
It's all about grace and finding that lift. Imagine yourself lightly pressing up onto your tiptoes, engaging your calves, and feeling that sense of lightness and elevation.
So it's like about finding that feeling of weightlessness, but with control.
Exactly. It's essential for developing the calf strength and balance that are so crucial in ballet.
And then there's tundu, that another one of those foundational moves.
Absolutely. Tendu literally means stretched, and that's exactly what it is. It's a controlled extension of the leg, brushing your foot along the floor.
Oh, that actually sounds kind of simple.
It might look simple, but it's deceptively challenging. It's all about precision, control, and feeling that connection from your hip all the way down through your toes.
So it's more about the precision than the power then.
You could say that. Ballet is often about making the difficult look effortless.
Right, that makes sense. It's so interesting how even these like seemingly simple moves have so much emphasis on precision and control
Yeah.
in ballet.
That's what makes it so captivating to watch. Every movement is deliberate, controlled, and infused with artistry.
You know, it makes me really want to like sign up for a ballet class and experience all this firsthand.
It really is incredible to experience, that's for sure. And speaking of experiencing ballet, the book doesn't just cover the physical steps. It actually talks about what it's like to be in a ballet class.
Oh yeah, like there's a whole etiquette thing, right? It's not just like show up and start twirling,
Definitely not. Ballet has a rich history and traditions, and that extends to the classroom.
which makes sense, I guess. Like I've always thought of ballet as very structured, but I never really considered why.
Well, a lot of it comes down to respect. Respect for the art form, respect for the instructor, and respect for your fellow dancers.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's about creating an environment where everyone can like focus and learn.
Exactly. It's like entering a space dedicated to hard work and discipline, so you want to honor that shared commitment.
Wow. I never thought about it like that, but it's true. And one thing that really struck me in the book was the role of the accompanist. I always just figured like they played some nice background music, but there's so much more than that.
Oh, absolutely. The accompanist is like another teacher in the room. They're not just keeping time, they're bringing the music to life in a way that enhances the dancer's understanding of the movements.
So it's almost like a musical conversation between the accompanist, the teacher, and the dancers.
Exactly. The book even shares this anecdote about a renowned ballet mistress who insisted on having only the most skilled pianists accompany her classes. She firmly believed that the right pianist could elevate the entire class, bringing a deeper level of artistry and nuance to the exercises.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It really highlights how interconnected the music and the movement are in ballet.
Precisely. And speaking of movement, let's talk about some of the specific steps the book covers. We have to talk about the pas de chat.
Yes. Step of the cat. The name alone is so intriguing.
It really is. And when you see it performed well, it really does evoke that feline grace and agility.
It's like, how does a dancer actually look like a cat in this step?
Well, picture this. A dancer leaps sideways, bringing their feet up one after the other as if stepping over a puddle or a low obstacle.
Okay, I can kind of see it in my head.
It's a very quick, light, and fluid movement,
Yeah.
and it requires a lot of control and coordination to make it look effortless, which, as we've discussed, is a hallmark of ballet.
So it's one of those like deceptively difficult looking moves.
Exactly. It's all about strength disguised as grace. And then we have the jeté, the classic ballet leap, that moment where a dancer seems to defy gravity, soaring through the air.
Yes, the jeté is so iconic. Like when you think of ballet posters, there's usually a jeté happening somewhere.
Absolutely, it's a showstopper. And while we often focus on the height and extension of the leap, what makes a truly great jeté is the smoothness and control, both in the takeoff and the landing.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about how high you can jump, but how gracefully you can do it.
Precisely. It's about creating this illusion of effortlessness, even though it requires incredible strength and athleticism. And of course, we can't forget about the pirouette, the iconic ballet spin.
The pirouette, the one move that everyone can picture,
Yeah.
even if they've never seen a ballet.
Exactly. It's such a classic image. The dancer, perfectly balanced, spinning on one foot. It looks almost effortless.
But I'm sure it's anything but effortless.
Definitely not. To achieve that illusion of effortlessness, dancers rely on incredible core strength, precise spotting techniques.
Spotting techniques. What's that?
Good question. It's how dancers keep from getting dizzy when they're turning. They fix their gaze on a specific point as they turn, and then at the last second, they whip their heads around to refocus on that same spot.
So it's like a visual anchor that helps them maintain their balance while spinning.
Exactly. It's pretty fascinating stuff, and a great example of how dancers train their bodies and minds to do these incredible things.
It really is. I never realized how much athleticism was involved in ballet before. Like, I knew it was demanding, but this is next level stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's a highly technical art form that requires years of dedicated training, but when you see it done well, it's pure magic.
It really is. And Ballet Illustrated does such a great job of, like, pulling back the curtain and giving you a glimpse into all the work and artistry that goes into it.
It really does give you a new appreciation, doesn't it?
Totally.
Right.
So, like, for anyone listening who's feeling inspired, what's the best way to, experience more ballet?
Well, the obvious answer is to go see a live performance. There's nothing quite like seeing those dancers on stage, bringing it all to life.
Oh, absolutely. And, like, luckily these days, there are so many ways to do that, even if you don't live near a big city with, like, a ballet company.
Exactly. You can find amazing recordings of performances online, or even check to see if your local cinema is screening a live broadcast.
Oh, that's a good idea. I love those screenings. And I bet, after having this conversation and, like, really getting a sense of all the nuances of ballet, those performances will take on a whole new meaning for our listeners.
Absolutely. They'll start to notice things they might have missed before, like the precision of the footwork or the way a dancer uses their eyes and head during a turn.
It's like having a whole new vocabulary to understand and appreciate what you're seeing.
Exactly. It opens up a whole new level of appreciation for the art form.
So as we're wrapping up our deep dive here, what's like the one big takeaway you hope people walk away with?
This book does a fantastic job of explaining the technical side of ballet, but what I hope really resonated with listeners is the idea that ballet is so much more than just technique.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
It's a language of expression. Every movement, every gesture, every pointed foot and lifted arm tells a story.
It's like those old silent films where the actors had to convey everything through their movements and expressions.
Exactly. So I guess my challenge to your listeners is this. The next time you watch a ballet, whether it's live or on a screen, try to look beyond just the steps. Try to see the emotion, the intention, the story that the dancers are trying to tell with their bodies.
That's such a great point because really, at its heart, that's what any art form is trying to do, right? Connect with us on an emotional level and tell us a story.
Exactly.
This has been amazing. Thanks so much for taking us on this journey through the world of ballet.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about ballet.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Keep those brains curious, and we'll see you next time.